The galactic database showed Earth as a small blue dot with a simple label: harmless. 3 alien empires controlled most of the known galaxy, and none of them worried about the third planet from a yellow star. The hegemony ruled through military might, the Void Collective dominated trade routes, and the Crystal Empire controlled advanced technology. Together, they had kept peace for over 200 years, by dividing weaker worlds among themselves. Earth fell into the hegemony's territory by accident. When human radio signals first reached alien receivers 50 years ago, a junior officer filed the discovery under primitive species, monitor occasionally. The report sat in digital storage until humans launched their first crewed spacecraft, beyond their solar system. Even then, the aliens barely paid attention. Ambassador Nalthar of the hegemony visited Earth exactly once. He landed in what humans called New York, met with world leaders for 3 days, and left with a standard protection agreement. Earth would provide raw materials and labor in exchange for security from hostile forces. The humans signed eagerly, grateful for contact with advanced civilizations. That was 3 years ago. Since then, Earth had become a convenient source of cheap resources and desperate workers. Human mining crews extracted rare metals from dangerous asteroid fields because their lives were considered expendable. Human farmers grew food for alien colonies because their primitive agriculture could be easily replaced. Human students attended alien universities as curiosities, not as equals. Dr. Alex Reed worked 16 hours a day in his laboratory beneath the Australian desert. The surface facilities looked like a geological research station, but underground, Alex and his team were building humanity's first major breakthrough. They called it Project Looking Glass, and it would allow instant communication across unlimited distances using quantum entanglement. The alien protectors had no idea the project existed. They assumed humans were too primitive to understand advanced physics, much less develop new technology. Their regular inspections focused on military equipment and spacecraft, not research facilities hidden in remote locations. Alex wiped sweat from his forehead as he calibrated the quantum resonance chamber. Around him, dozens of human scientists worked with equipment they had built from salvaged alien technology, black market components, and pure human ingenuity. They had been preparing for this moment for 2 years. Meanwhile, Captain Tom Bradley stood in the command center of Luna Base 7, watching another hegemony convoy strip resources from the asteroid belt without asking permission. Earth's small fleet of defense ships could do nothing except file protests that were ignored. The aliens had made it clear that humans existed at their pleasure. Tom's hands clenched as he read the latest report from the Agricultural Ministry. The hegemony had redirected another shipment of grain to their colony worlds, leaving Earth's population on reduced rations. Children were going hungry, so alien colonists could enjoy abundance. Lieutenant Emma Walsh entered the command center carrying a sealed folder marked with the highest security classification. She looked nervous as she handed it to Tom. Inside were the final plans for Operation Homecoming, humanity's desperate gamble to change their relationship with the galaxy. Tom studied the documents carefully. Hidden across human space, ordinary citizens had been secretly training for roles they never expected to play. Janitors in alien facilities had learned demolitions. Miners in asteroid operations had become sabotage experts. Cultural exchange. Students had memorized every detail of alien technology and security systems. The plan was audacious and terrifying. If it succeeded, humanity might finally earn respect from their alien neighbors. If it failed, Earth would likely face complete destruction as punishment for rebellion. Deep space monitoring stations began detecting unusual activity throughout the galaxy. Human ships, supposedly engaged in routine cargo runs, were changing course toward previously unknown destinations. Communication traffic between Earth and human colonies increased dramatically, but alien intelligence services dismissed it as normal commercial chatter. Dr. Reed's team completed the final tests on Project Looking Glass just as reports arrived from Earth's spy network. For 3 years, human agents had infiltrated alien society at every level. They worked as servants, laborers, students, and researchers, all while secretly documenting everything they saw. The information they gathered revealed the true nature of galactic civilization. The 3 major powers maintained their dominance through careful division of resources and territories. Smaller species were kept weak and dependent, never allowed to develop enough strength to threaten the established order. Earth was supposed to remain grateful and subservient forever. The aliens had dealt with dozens of species this way, and none had ever successfully challenged the system. They saw no reason why humans would be different. President Maria Santos received Dr. Reed's final report while sitting in the emergency bunker beneath Geneva. The quantum communication array was operational, human assets were in position throughout alien space, and Operation Homecoming was ready to begin. She had to make the decision that would determine humanity's future. Around the galaxy, human operatives waited for the signal that would change everything. They had spent years learning alien weaknesses, studying their technology, and preparing for this moment. The aliens, who had dismissed them as primitive, were about to discover that humans possessed something more valuable than advanced weapons or faster ships. They had the willingness to fight for their freedom, no matter the cost. Tom Bradley stood at the viewport of Luna Base 7, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so full of promise. First contact with alien civilizations should have been humanity's greatest achievement. Instead, it had become their greatest humiliation. That was about to change. The message from Earth arrived on every human vessel simultaneously, transmitted through Dr. Reed's quantum network in a code that alien intelligence services had never seen. It contained just 4 words, but they would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The hunt begins now. Across human space, ordinary people who had been dismissed as harmless began revealing their true nature. The galaxy was about to learn that the most dangerous species were not always the most advanced ones. Sometimes they were the ones who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Admiral Kextar was reviewing routine patrol reports when the first distress signal reached Hegemony Command. The mining vessel Prosperity had simply vanished from sensors while extracting platinum from the asteroid field near Jupiter. No explosion, no debris, no final transmission. One moment it existed, the next it was gone. 3 more ships disappeared over the following week. Each loss puzzled the Hegemony's military analysts because the missing vessels carried sophisticated defensive systems that should have protected them against any known threat. The idea that primitive humans might be responsible never entered their calculations. Captain Ross Mitchell floated in the cargo bay of the ESV Ghost, humanity's first stealth warship. Built in secret using reverse-engineered alien technology, the ship was invisible to conventional sensors and armed with weapons that the galaxy's military experts would have called impossible. Instead of energy beams or exotic particles, the Ghost used simple physics turned into a weapon of devastating precision. Ross checked his calculations one final time before giving the order to fire. The target was a Hegemony patrol squadron conducting what they called security sweeps through human space. In reality, they were intimidation runs designed to remind Earth's population who really controlled their solar system. The Ghost had spent 6 days tracking the alien ships, studying their patrol patterns and identifying their weaknesses. The Hegemony crews had grown overconfident during 3 years of unchallenged dominance. They flew predictable routes, maintained minimal defensive postures, and never imagined they might be hunted. Ross activated the magnetic accelerator that served as the Ghost's primary weapon. Instead of firing energy projectiles that alien shields could deflect, it launched chunks of refined titanium at 90% of light speed. The metal fragments struck with the force of nuclear weapons, but left no energy signature that alien sensors could detect. The lead hegemony ship exploded in silence, its advanced armor useless against kinetic impacts that concentrated millions of tons of force into areas the size of dinner plates. The remaining patrol vessels barely had time to realize they were under attack before similar projectiles tore them apart. Dr. Reed's quantum communication network carried news of the successful ambush to resistance cells throughout the galaxy. On 17 different worlds, human operatives who had spent years disguised as harmless workers began revealing their true purposes. David Park had been mopping floors in a void collective research facility for 8 months. The alien scientists barely noticed him as he cleaned their laboratories and emptied their waste containers. They certainly never suspected that he had memorized every detail of their classified experiments, documented their security procedures, and identified the exact locations of their most valuable equipment. David's team moved with military precision that would have impressed professional soldiers. They had trained for this mission using detailed plans based on months of careful observation. Every movement was calculated, every contingency planned, every escape route memorized. The explosion that destroyed the Void Collective's primary research station looked like an accident. Exotic matter containment systems failed simultaneously across multiple laboratories, creating a cascade reaction that consumed the entire facility. Investigators would eventually conclude that the disaster resulted from poor maintenance procedures and inadequate safety protocols. They would never discover that David and his team had escaped with complete copies of the station's research database, including classified files on faster-than-light travel, advanced artificial intelligence, and weapons technology that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Similar operations succeeded throughout alien space. Human refugees, who had been accepted into alien society as harmless displaced persons, revealed themselves as highly trained intelligence operatives. Mining crews became demolition experts, who could turn routine equipment into sophisticated bombs. Cultural exchange students transformed into sabotage specialists who understood alien technology better than many of its creators. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session as reports of coordinated attacks reached their chambers. Representative after representative stood to describe impossible losses and inexplicable defeats. The humans who had been dismissed as primitive were demonstrating capabilities that challenged everything the established powers believed about technological development and military strategy. Ambassador Nalthar found himself trying to explain how Earth's population had hidden such extensive preparation from alien surveillance. The intelligence failure was so complete that some council members suspected traitors within their own governments. The alternative, that humans had simply outsmarted the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, was too disturbing to accept. President Santos addressed the hidden network of human operatives through Dr. Reed's quantum communication system. Her words reached every resistance cell simultaneously, transmitted through channels that alien intelligence services could not intercept or decode. For 3 years, she said, we have been told that humanity's proper place is serving our betters. We have smiled while they stole our resources, bowed while they treated us like children, and pretended to be grateful for their protection. Today, we stop pretending. The message that followed went out on every frequency, in every language, broadcast, simultaneously from transmitters hidden throughout the galaxy. Alien communication networks that had operated without interruption for centuries suddenly carried an unauthorized signal that their security systems could not block. We are no longer asking for respect, the transmission declared. We are demanding it. We are no longer requesting equal treatment. We are taking it. The galaxy will learn that humanity cannot be conquered, cannot be enslaved, and will not be ignored. The broadcast included detailed evidence of alien exploitation, documented proof of broken treaties, and comprehensive records of human suffering under the current system. But more importantly, it demonstrated that humans possessed technology and capabilities that the galaxy's major powers had never suspected. Empress Valdora of the Crystal Empire studied intelligence reports that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of human capabilities. Their stealth technology was years ahead of anything in the Crystal Empire's database. Their quantum communication system operated on principles that her best scientists claimed were theoretically impossible. Their coordination across interstellar distances suggested planning abilities that challenged every assumption about primitive civilizations. What terrified the alien leadership most was not the technology itself, but the implications of how humans had developed it. They had reverse-engineered advanced alien systems using nothing but salvaged components and basic laboratory equipment. They had created revolutionary breakthroughs while being closely monitored by supposedly superior intelligence agencies. They had hidden massive military preparations in plain sight of observers who believed they understood human capabilities. Admiral Kextar realized with growing horror that his forces had been fighting a war they did not know existed against an enemy they had never bothered to understand. The humans were not trying to build a traditional military that could match alien fleets in direct combat. Instead, they were waging a type of warfare that the peaceful galaxy had not seen for generations. They fought like ghosts, striking without warning and vanishing before retaliation was possible. They fought like viruses, infiltrating alien society and corrupting it from within. They fought like prey animals backed into corners, with the desperate creativity that comes from having no choice except victory or extinction. The galaxy was about to learn that the most dangerous enemies are not always the strongest ones. Sometimes they are the ones who fight with nothing left to lose. The war room beneath Geneva had become the nerve center of humanity's revolution. Banks of monitors displayed real-time intelligence from across the galaxy, while quantum communication arrays maintained contact with resistance cells that the aliens still believed were harmless workers and refugees. President Santos studied reports that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Human operatives controlled critical infrastructure on 47 alien worlds. Sabotage teams had identified vulnerable points in every major military installation within 500 light-years of Earth. Most importantly, the galaxy's 3 dominant empires still did not understand the true scale of human infiltration. Commander Lisa Chen led a team of agricultural workers on a Crystal Empire research colony that specialized in developing new food production techniques. For 18 months, she and her people had played the role of grateful immigrants, working hard and causing no trouble. The alien administrators praised their dedication and work ethic in regular reports to the colonial government. Those same reports never mentioned that Lisa's team had mapped every security system, documented every research project, and identified the exact location of the colony's most classified experiments. The Crystal Empire was developing weapons that could disrupt entire solar systems, and they stored the prototypes in a facility that Lisa could reach by walking through maintenance tunnels. The attack began at precisely 0300 local time, when alien security was at its lowest point. Lisa's team moved through the research complex like shadows, avoiding sensors they had studied for months and bypassing defenses they had helped install. The weapons they carried were built from farming equipment and household chemicals, but they were as effective as military explosives. The Crystal Empire's most advanced weapons development facility ceased to exist in a series of carefully controlled detonations. The alien investigators who arrived later found evidence of equipment failure and safety violations, but no trace of sabotage. They certainly never suspected that the agricultural workers who died in the explosion had been replaced by synthetic bodies designed to conceal their escape. Lisa and her team were already aboard a disguised cargo ship, heading for their next target with stolen research data that would advance human technology by decades. Admiral Kextar stood before the Hegemony High Command, trying to explain losses that challenged every military doctrine his people had developed over centuries of conquest. In 6 months, human raiders had destroyed or captured over 300 hegemony vessels, including 12 ships from the supposedly invincible First Fleet. "Their tactics make no sense," he reported, his voice strained with frustration. They avoid direct confrontation, attack supply lines instead of military targets, and disappear before we can respond. They fight like criminals, not soldiers. General Thek's Era, the hegemony's supreme military commander, studied tactical displays that showed the systematic destruction of their logistical network. Human raiders were not trying to win battles or capture territory. Instead, they were making it impossible for hegemony forces to maintain their operations in human space. Perhaps, she said slowly, we have been thinking about this conflict incorrectly. These humans are not trying to build an empire or establish military dominance. They are trying to make conquering them more expensive than leaving them alone. The realization hit the hegemony leadership like a physical blow. For centuries, they had maintained control through overwhelming force that made resistance seem hopeless. But humans were demonstrating that advanced technology meant nothing if supply lines could be cut, if reinforcements never arrived, if every victory came at a cost greater than its value. Captain Ross Mitchell floated in the observation deck of the ESV Retribution, watching a hegemony fleet approach what their intelligence claimed was a defenseless human mining colony. The aliens had grown desperate enough to target civilian populations, hoping to force Earth's government into surrender. They had no idea that the mining colony was actually humanity's most sophisticated military trap. Hidden throughout the asteroid field were weapons platforms disguised as industrial equipment, each one armed with the same kinetic accelerators that had proven so effective against alien ships. The hegemony fleet entered the kill zone with their shields configured for asteroid impacts, not military engagement. They expected to find terrified civilians begging for mercy, not a coordinated defensive system that had been waiting for months for exactly this opportunity. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, the hegemony had lost their entire Fourth Fleet, including the flagship that carried Admiral Kextar himself. The wreckage would provide human engineers with enough advanced technology to build 50 more ships like the Retribution. But the real victory came when Ross opened a communication channel to the surviving hegemony escape pods. Instead of the threats or demands the aliens expected, they heard something that chilled them more than any weapon could have. "You have two choices," Ross said in perfect hegemony standard. "You can return to your superiors with a message of peace, or you can return to them as examples of what happens to those who target human civilians. Choose quickly." Admiral Kextar found himself aboard a human vessel for the first time, sitting across from Captain Tom Bradley in a room that looked disturbingly similar to hegemony ship designs. The humans had not just copied alien technology, they had improved it. "Your species," Tom said quietly, "seems to believe that might makes right. You conquer weaker civilizations because you can, and you assume they will accept their fate because resistance is futile. Has it occurred to you that this approach might have limitations?" Kextar's 4 eyes studied the human commander with new understanding. "You are not trying to defeat the hegemony. You are trying to teach us that conquering your people is more trouble than it is worth." Tom smiled, an expression that the Admiral had learned to recognize as both friendly and terrifying. "The galaxy has forgotten that cooperation is more profitable than conquest, that trade agreements work better than protection rackets, and that equals make better allies than slaves. We are simply providing a remedial education." The conversation that followed would be recorded and transmitted to every major government in the galaxy. Human prisoners were not tortured or executed. They were educated, negotiated with, and released with messages that their superiors found more disturbing than any threat of violence. Humans were not trying to build an empire. They were not seeking revenge for 3 years of exploitation. They were simply demanding to be treated with the same respect that civilized species showed each other. The galaxy's major powers found this reasonable demand more terrifying than any declaration of war. Dr. Reed's quantum communication network carried news of victories and defeats to resistance cells that operated with increasing boldness. Human agents were no longer hiding their activities as carefully because alien security forces were too demoralized to investigate effectively. The Void Collective's trade empire began collapsing as human sabotage made commercial shipping through their territory impossibly expensive. The Crystal Empire's research programs ground to a halt as security breaches revealed that human spies had access to their most classified projects. The hegemony's military found itself fighting shadows that struck without warning and vanished before retaliation was possible. President Santos addressed the Galactic Council directly, using communication channels that their best security experts could not block or trace. Her words reached every civilized world simultaneously, broadcast with technology that officially did not exist. "We have tried diplomacy," she said. "We have tried cooperation. We have tried patience. You responded by treating us as property, to be bought and sold. Now you will learn the cost of that mistake." The transmission included detailed intelligence that proved human agents had infiltrated alien society at every level. Government officials, military commanders, research scientists, and industrial leaders discovered that their most trusted subordinates had been working for Earth all along. But more importantly, the broadcast demonstrated that humans were capable of coordinating activities across interstellar distances with precision that challenged the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. They possessed technology that made secure communication possible on a scale never before achieved, and they were willing to use it in ways that the galaxy's established powers found profoundly unsettling. The message that followed was simple, direct, and utterly serious. Humanity would no longer accept the role of junior partner in galactic civilization. They would no longer provide resources and labor in exchange for empty promises of eventual equality. They would no longer pretend to be grateful for protection they had never requested. The galaxy could learn to treat Earth as an equal, or it could learn what happened to those who tried to keep humanity in chains. The choice was theirs, but the time for choosing was running out. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in a chamber that had not seen such tension in over 2 centuries. Representatives from dozens of civilizations watched as the 3 major empires struggled to explain how a single primitive world had brought their combined forces to the edge of collapse. Empress Valdora of the Crystal Empire spoke first, her crystalline form flickering with patterns that indicated severe distress. "In 8 months, we have lost 60% of our research facilities, 40% of our manufacturing capacity, and complete control of 17 star systems. Our analysts estimate that rebuilding will require at least 50 years, assuming the attacks stop immediately." General Thexera of the Hegemony presented military losses that stunned the assembled delegates. "Human raiders have destroyed over 800 of our vessels, including 5 dreadnoughts that we believed were invulnerable to any known weapon. More critically, they have demonstrated the ability to strike any target within our territory, regardless of its defensive preparations." Trade Director Zolmath from the Void Collective delivered the most disturbing report of all. Commercial. Shipping through our controlled space has decreased by 80% because insurance companies now classify human space as a war zone. Our economic projections indicate total financial collapse within 2 years if current trends continue. The smaller civilizations that had always feared the major empires watched these presentations with fascination and growing hope. For the first time in their history, they were seeing proof that the galaxy's bullies could be defeated by intelligence, determination, and the willingness to fight unconventionally. Captain Lisa Patel studied the tactical display aboard the ESV Vengeance as a hegemony fleet approached the human colony world of New Brisbane. The aliens had grown desperate enough to target civilian populations directly, hoping to force Earth's government into surrender through mass casualties. They had no idea that New Brisbane had been prepared for this exact scenario for over a year. Every civilian had been evacuated months ago, replaced by military volunteers who understood the risks they faced. The colony itself was now the galaxy's most sophisticated trap, designed to teach the hegemony a lesson they would never forget. The approaching fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 4 dreadnoughts, enough firepower to glass the entire planet's surface. Admiral Kextar had been given explicit orders to make an example that would break human resistance once and for all. His ships entered the system with weapons charged and shields raised, expecting to find a helpless population, ready to surrender. Instead, they found something that challenged everything they thought they knew about military strategy. The space around New Brisbane erupted with defensive fire from positions that should not have existed. Asteroids revealed themselves as camouflaged. Weapons platforms, derelict ships powered up and began launching coordinated attacks. The planet's surface bristled with artillery that could reach targets in high orbit. But the real shock came when human ships began arriving from hyperspace coordinates that the hegemony had never detected. The ESV Vengeance led a fleet of 20 vessels that had been invisible to alien sensors until the moment they chose to reveal themselves. Lisa opened a communication channel to the hegemony fleet as her weapons locked onto their targets. Admiral Kextar, this is Captain Patel of the Earth Space Navy. You have entered human territory with hostile intent and threatened our civilian population. This is your only warning to withdraw. Kextar's response was predictable. You are outnumbered 4-1, human. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Lisa smiled as she gave the order to fire. The hegemony admiral was thinking in terms of traditional warfare, counting ships and comparing weapons specifications. He had no understanding of how humans actually fought. The battle that followed became known as the Massacre of New Brisbane, though not because of human casualties. The hegemony fleet found itself caught in a 3-dimensional killing field that had been prepared for months. Every approach vector was covered by overlapping fields of fire. Every escape route was blocked by coordinated human forces. Human weapons were not more advanced than their alien equivalents, but they were used with tactical precision that the peaceful galaxy had forgotten was possible. Kinetic projectiles struck at angles that alien armor had never been designed to deflect. Electronic warfare systems disrupted communications and targeting computers. Most importantly, human forces fought with coordination that made their individual ships exponentially more effective. The hegemony lost 14 ships in 37 minutes. Admiral Kextar found himself alone in an escape pod, surrounded by debris that had once been the most powerful fleet in his empire's navy. But instead of being killed or imprisoned, he was rescued by a human medical team that treated his injuries, with the same care they would have given their own wounded. He was brought aboard the Vengeance and offered food, medical attention, and a chair across from Captain Bradley. Your empire, Tom said quietly, now has a choice to make. You can continue this war and lose everything you have built over the last 1,000 years, or you can accept that humanity deserves the same respect you show each other. Kextar studied the human commander with growing understanding. You could have killed me. You could have executed my entire crew as an example to others. Why did you show mercy? Tom leaned back in his chair, looking tired but determined. Because we are not trying to become the monsters you thought we were. We are trying to prove that we deserve to be treated as equals, not as slaves or enemies. The conversation that followed was recorded and transmitted throughout the galaxy, carrying a message that challenged fundamental assumptions about power and civilization. Humans were not seeking revenge for 3 years of exploitation. They were not trying to build an empire or establish dominance over their former oppressors. They were simply demanding the basic respect that should exist between intelligent species. Dr. Reed's quantum communication network carried news of the victory to every human settlement in the galaxy, but also to alien governments that were finally beginning to understand what they were really fighting. Intelligence reports from across their territories painted an increasingly clear picture of human capabilities and intentions. Humans had spent 3 years infiltrating alien society while being dismissed as harmless primitives. They had reverse-engineered, advanced technology using salvaged components and basic laboratory equipment. They had built a military force capable of challenging the galaxy's major powers using creativity, determination, and tactical innovation. Most importantly, they had done all of this while showing a level of mercy and restraint that their alien opponents had never expected. President Santos addressed the leaders of the three major empires directly, using communication channels that bypassed all of their security measures. Her words reached government chambers, military headquarters, and research facilities simultaneously, demonstrating once again that human technology was more advanced than anyone had imagined. "We have shown you the price of treating humanity as property," she said. "We have demonstrated that conquest is more expensive than cooperation, that slaves make poor trading partners, and that equals make better allies than enemies. The question now is whether you are wise enough to learn from these lessons." The message that followed included detailed proposals for new treaties based on mutual respect and shared benefit. Humans were offering to share their technological breakthroughs, provide access to their quantum communication network, and contribute to galactic civilization as equal partners. But the offer came with a deadline and a warning that every alien government took very seriously. The galaxy had 7 days to respond with genuine negotiations, or humanity would demonstrate that the attacks of the past 8 months had been a demonstration of restraint rather than their full capabilities. The countdown had begun, and the future of galactic civilization hung in the balance. The neutral station constructed for the peace negotiations floated in empty space between territories, built jointly by all major powers as a symbol of their commitment to finding a diplomatic solution. The structure itself represented a new type of cooperation, with human engineering solving problems that had puzzled alien architects for generations. President Santos walked through corridors that buzzed with activity as delegations from across the galaxy prepared for discussions that would reshape civilization itself. The past 18 months of warfare had demonstrated that the old system of galactic dominance was unsustainable, but building something better would require wisdom, patience, and trust that had never existed between these species. Dr. Reed accompanied the human delegation as the newly appointed Minister of Galactic Affairs, a position that would have been inconceivable 2 years ago. Her quantum communication technology had become the foundation for all interstellar negotiations, providing secure channels that no government could intercept or manipulate. The main conference chamber held representatives from over 40 civilizations, but everyone understood that the real negotiations would take place between humanity and the 3 major empires. The smaller species watched with fascination as their former oppressors struggled to accept a new member of the galactic elite. Ambassador Nalthar of the Hegemony spoke first, his voice carrying the weariness of a diplomat who had watched his empire's carefully constructed order crumble in less than 2 years. The human demands are unprecedented: equal representation in the Galactic Council, unrestricted access to all trade networks, shared technology agreements, and mutual defense pacts. No emerging civilization has ever been granted such concessions. Empress Valdora's crystalline form shifted through colors that indicated deep contemplation. The question is not what humans deserve based on their age as a spacefaring species, but what they have earned through their actions. They have demonstrated technological innovation, strategic thinking, and military capabilities that rival our own. More importantly, they have shown remarkable restraint in victory. Trade Director Zolmath from the Void Collective activated a holographic display showing the economic impact of the conflict. The cost of suppressing human resistance has exceeded 40 trillion galactic credits. Military losses, infrastructure, damage, and commercial disruption have crippled our member worlds. Meanwhile, the cost of treating humans as equals would be negligible in comparison. General Thexara of the Hegemony stood to address the assembly, her scarred features reflecting the price her forces had paid for underestimating humanity. "We have learned that humans possess something more dangerous than advanced weapons or Superior numbers. They have the willingness to sacrifice everything for their freedom and the intelligence to make that sacrifice as expensive as possible for their enemies. Captain Bradley represented the human military at the negotiations, still wearing the dress uniform that bore the scars of 2 years of desperate fighting. His presence reminded everyone in the chamber that diplomacy was only possible because human forces had earned respect through blood and determination. "We never wanted to fight you," he said simply. "We wanted to join you. When that was impossible, we chose to prove that we deserved a place at this table. The question now is whether we can build something better than the system that made this war necessary." The negotiations lasted for 3 weeks, with breaks for consultation and careful consideration of proposals that would affect trillions of beings across the galaxy. Human representatives demonstrated the same creativity and persistence that had made them so effective in warfare, finding solutions to problems that had seemed insurmountable. The breakthrough came when Dr. Reed proposed sharing humanity's quantum communication technology with all galactic civilizations, not just the major empires. For the first time in history, instantaneous communication would be available to every species, eliminating the isolation that had made oppression possible. "Information," she explained, "is the foundation of freedom. When all civilizations can communicate freely, when trade and diplomacy are not controlled by a few powerful empires, when smaller species can coordinate their own defense, the old system of dominance becomes impossible to maintain." The proposal terrified the established powers because it would democratize galactic civilization in ways they had never imagined, but it also offered them something they needed desperately: a way to end the costly war with humanity while saving face before their own populations. Admiral Kextar, who had become an unexpected advocate for peace after his capture and release, addressed his own government through secure channels. "These humans fight like demons, but they negotiate like merchants. They want profit, not punishment. They want partnership, not dominance. We can give them what they ask for and gain allies who will make us stronger, or we can continue this war and lose everything we have built." The treaty that emerged from the negotiations was revolutionary in its scope and implications. Humanity gained immediate membership in the Galactic Council with voting rights equal to the established empires. Human vessels received unrestricted passage through all trade routes. Most importantly, humanity's quantum communication network became the foundation for a new type of interstellar cooperation. But the treaty also included provisions that no previous agreement had contained. War crimes tribunals would investigate abuses committed by all parties during the conflict. Economic reparations would help rebuild damaged worlds and compensate civilian casualties. Most radically, the Galactic Council would establish departments dedicated to preventing the exploitation of developing civilizations. President Santos signed the document that officially ended humanity's status as a protected species and established Earth as a full member of galactic civilization. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy using quantum communication arrays that made such instant transmission possible for the first time in history. Captain Lisa Patel stood on the bridge of the ESV Vengeance, now serving as humanity's flagship in joint patrols with former enemies who had become reluctant allies. The sight of human and alien vessels working together would have been impossible to imagine 2 years ago, but the galaxy was learning to adapt to new realities. The first test of the new alliance came when pirates from the Outer Rim began raiding trade convoys, believing that the recent upheaval had weakened galactic defenses. They discovered instead that human tactical expertise combined with alien technology created a defensive force more effective than anything the galaxy had seen before. Tom Bradley found himself working alongside Admiral Kextar to coordinate anti-piracy operations, a partnership that both men would have found absurd. During the war, their joint forces moved with precision that surprised even veteran military commanders, demonstrating that former enemies could indeed become effective allies. The economic benefits of cooperation became apparent within months of the treaty's signing. Human innovation accelerated technological development across all member species, while alien manufacturing capabilities allowed rapid production of new designs. Trade volumes increased dramatically as quantum communication eliminated the delays and uncertainties that had limited commerce for centuries. Dr. Reed's research facilities expanded from hidden bunkers to open laboratories where human and alien scientists worked together on projects that neither species could have completed alone. The quantum communication network evolved into something resembling a galactic internet, connecting civilizations in ways that promoted understanding and prevented the isolation that had made oppression possible. But perhaps the most significant change was philosophical rather than technological. The galaxy's smaller civilizations watched humanity's rise with hope and determination, realizing that the established order was not unchangeable. Species that had accepted subjugation for generations began demanding better treatment, using Earth's example as proof that resistance was possible. The Hegemony, Void Collective, and Crystal Empire found themselves managing a galaxy where cooperation was more profitable than conquest, where trade agreements worked better than protection rackets, and where equals made better allies than slaves. The transition was difficult for leaders who had grown comfortable with unchallenged dominance, but the alternative was the slow collapse of everything they had built. President Santos stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council, addressing an assembly that included representatives from species that had been silent for centuries. The chamber buzzed with translations in dozens of languages, carried by communication systems that made real-time dialogue possible across vast cultural and biological differences. 2 years ago, she said, humanity was classified as harmless, primitive, and safely ignorant of galactic affairs. Today, we stand as equals among the stars, not because we conquered our neighbors, but because we proved that freedom cannot be given as a gift. It must be earned, defended, and shared. The speech that followed became known as the Galactic Compact, establishing principles that would guide interstellar relations for generations. No species would be held in involuntary servitude. No civilization would be denied the right to develop according to its own values. No empire would be allowed to grow so powerful that it could ignore the rights of others. Most importantly, the compact established that military strength without moral authority was ultimately unsustainable, that cooperation created more wealth than exploitation, and that the galaxy's future depended on the wisdom to treat all intelligent life with respect. The database that had once listed Earth as harmless now carried a different classification entirely. Humanity was designated as a founding member of the reformed Galactic Republic, a civilization whose contributions to peace, technology, and justice had earned them a permanent place in the community of stars. The blue marble that had been dismissed as irrelevant now served as a symbol of hope for oppressed species throughout the galaxy. Earth's example proved that no tyranny was permanent, no injustice was unchangeable, and no people were too small to make a difference in the vast cosmos. Admiral Kextar, now serving as liaison between the hegemony and the new galactic government, often reflected on the lessons his people had learned through painful experience. The most dangerous civilizations were not always the most advanced ones. Sometimes they were the ones with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Humanity had possessed both in abundance, and they had used those advantages to reshape the galaxy in ways that no one had thought possible. The universe was a better place because Earth had refused to accept the role that others had chosen for them. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter now that freedom was no longer a privilege reserved for the powerful, but a right that belonged to every thinking being in the galaxy. Humanity had struck back not with hatred or revenge, but with the simple demand to be treated as equals. And in the end, that had been enough to change everything.